Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the Family Caregiver Alliance's Creativity, Communication, and Dementia webinar with Drs. Hanna and Anne Basting. I'm Edrina Harrison, the organization's Information Program Specialist. In addition to our speakers, we have Greg Link, Program Officer from the U.S. Administration on Aging, with us today. Family Caregiver Alliance has worked for over 30 years to help improve the quality of life for family caregivers through direct services, research, public awareness, and advocacy. With our colleagues at Arch National Respite and Resource Center, we jointly operate the Technical Assistance Centers for Caregiver Programs and Lifespan Respite to support the aging and respite networks. We do this to better serve older adults and their caregivers. The centers provide access to practical tools and multimedia. We maintain 2 robust websites with national databases of respite and model caregiver support programs and materials. We write policy updates, sponsor specialized trainings, and we provide individualized technical support. Our technical centers are funded by the Administration on Aging, which is represented by Greg Link. Greg?
Hi, thank you, Edrina, and thank you for everyone for tuning into this webinar. I'm with the Administration on Aging, and we've had the good opportunity to be able to fund the Family Caregiver Alliance to assist us as we continue to build the capacity of the aging network to meet the needs of family caregivers and supporting the educational needs of those who work with and on behalf of family caregivers around the country is certainly one of Assistant Secretary Greenlee's main objectives. So in the interest of time, I just want to say thank you to the Caregiver Alliance for pulling this webinar together, and I look forward to the information that's provided. Edrina?
Thanks, Greg. Before we begin our presentation, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping tasks. Today's webinar will be archived later on FCA's website, which is www.caregiver.org. On the left side of your screen, you'll be able to see the slides as they're being presented. On the right side is the control panel. You can use the red or orange arrow at the top to manage this panel. Due to the high number of attendees today, during the presentation you'll each be placed on mute, but we ask that you type in any questions or comments in the section on your screen and then hit send. After the presentation, there will be a question and answer period. We'll try to take as many questions as we can, but if your question isn't answered before the end of the session, we'll follow up with responses to those questions after the presentation. Please join us now in welcoming Hanna and Anne Basting.
We'll move forward. There's our bright and shining faces. And just as background to me, I direct the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee in the Helen Bader School of Social Welfare as the Center on Age and Community, which is poised at the cusp of university and community in trying to find innovative ways to improve our lives as we age. And the bulk of my work for 15 years has been doing that through the arts. So I'm operating as both fostering innovation among other scholars and community practitioners and older adults, and then also doing the work myself with my students in the community and with collaborative partners through from the university, between the university and the community. Move forward. There we go.
There, and I think I covered the mission. The National Center for Creative Aging actually focuses on 3 areas: health, community, and education. And to show the power of Anne and her center's great work, it was through a think tank Anne held in Milwaukee where I first met Kathy Kelly of the Family Caregiver Alliance, and thus we are here. And that's what's happening all over the country. And Anne, we can talk about the next slide. There's a great coming together of disciplines, people from the arts, education, health, social work, aging services, and recently, in fact, last week, this white paper was released, Arts and Human Development, the first one of its kind that looked at the impact of the arts in early childhood, youth, and later life. The first time we looked at it consistently across the lifespan. And this was an effort through the National Endowment of the Arts and Health and Human Services with support from the U.S. Department of Aging. The National Center for Creative Aging was honored to be a co-author of this paper. And we have the link and would be glad to share because it's going to inform the future policy, we hope, and research to open more support for your practice out in the field. So truly, there's more evidence growing, and I'd like to share some of the research, a key research finding that is written in the paper and separately. And in fact, I'm sure many of you know the work of Dr. Gene Cohen. Gene was director of the Center for Age, Health, and Humanities at George Washington University. And he did the first longitudinal study measuring the health benefits of community-based arts programs on older people. And he used the indicators, and Anne, if we could have the next slide, that are very common throughout research and practice in aging and health: social engagement and mastery, learning new skills, making new friends, which we are finding is key to maintaining good health and also in engaging people in various states of health and caregiving. Now, what Gene found through his research over 3 years in 3 sites, Washington, New York, and San Francisco, is significant benefits: better health generally, less doctor's visits, less medication, increased activity, social engagement, and really lower risk to long-term care. The ability to age in community, which certainly is our goal, to live healthy lives that we certainly are empowered to live with our loved ones in our place of choice. This results in projected savings, and the programs themselves are so inexpensive. Now, you may ask, how does this research impact directly people with Alzheimer's and dementia? And Gene's work, in fact, in other studies, and along with his colleagues, showed that the arts have the capacity to engage our brains fully. Neuroscience is showing this. And Anne, you can show the next slide. So creative expression actually builds capacity within our brain. PET scans show the brain lighting up. We know that contrary to popular beliefs earlier in the 20th century, that we can grow new brain cells, dendrites, if our brains are engaged and active. And even if we're fighting disease, we can still learn new things and engage in imagination, as Anne will certainly show us. In fact, here we have a Pigman Campbell. I'm sure you all know that Mr. Campbell recently made it public that he has Alzheimer's disease. He has trouble with daily functions, but he still performs. He still can be engaged in his art. To the right, you'll see William de Kooning, one of the giants in 20th century abstract art. In fact, there's a retrospective of his art at the Museum of Modern Art. And he actually painted far into his the disease of dementia. And what I am told of stories where he would be very listless and given a paintbrush would rise and paint. And we know this is true for people that sing and dance. And the power of the arts is truly integral to our beings as humans. Now, actually, I'd like to focus for a few minutes on the Museum of Modern Art. I'm sure many of you have heard of the program Meet Me at MoMA. It started off so simply. Museum educators trained in how to ask questions to people who are suffering from memory loss. And in fact, I think this work goes back to you, Anne, because you've done so much work in changing the paradigm from memory to imagination. So here you see a picture of both people with dementia in their early to mid stage with their caregivers in the Museum of Modern Art on a day that it's closed. So it's very quiet. There are guards there anyway, and the museum educator leads them on a very extraordinary tour that, according to New York University, and you can go to the next slide, showed that both the participants, the caregiver and the person with dementia, reported elevated moods, residual benefits, greater self-esteem, and this is such an easy project to do that it really has swept across the world. There are programs now in the Louvre. There are 2 in Washington, D.C., where we are. I think there's over 100 throughout our country, and in fact, many in Anne's state of Wisconsin. So again, we're in a time where we're seeing wonderful programs building across the country and accessible in our own communities, both big and small. Now, not all this work is done in the visual arts. We're finding wonderful programs in music. Here's an example, songwriting works, where songs are written in a group setting like stories. Well, they are stories. And the talented Judith Kate Friedman has invented this program, and it's growing across the country, where songs can be shared, memories can be shared, and again, the trials of fighting a disease and caring for a loved one drop away in the magic of that time together making music. And in dance, Kairos Dance of Minneapolis, again, an extraordinary dance company led by Maria Genet, intergenerational, interdisciplinary, works in nursing homes, long-term care, with caregivers, with family members, and with people with dementia. And again, what this does in terms not only of boosting mental health, it boosts the physical health by engaging the whole body, by encouraging flexibility and balance. Now let me give you one more example. The National Center for Creative Aging is actually based at a lovely facility in Washington, D.C. I hope when you come to town, you'll look us up. We're in Tinleytown near American University at Iona Senior Services. And this is an institution in Washington founded 40 years ago to serve and improve quality of life of older people. They have an active program using the arts in their adult day center. You can see Anthony Hyatt here, a musician in residence from Arts for the Aging, another great community arts group here dedicated to serving older that are in different facilities, especially those in adult day and long-term care. Anthony is playing songs on request and encouraging participation. Also, there's a registered art therapist in Iona Senior Services, so we have room for fine artists, we have room for art therapists, music, dance, drama, all the arts. And here you'll see another very wonderful artist. She is an artist in residence here. We have hundreds of pieces of artwork throughout the building that are done by older artists that really show their whole body of work as a celebration of their life and their work in community. So wherever you are, you can certainly request help in finding these services. Please contact our national office. We have all the websites here, the programs I just mentioned, the Meet Me at MoMA program, Songwriting Works, Dance Exchange is another wonderful program around the country that, again, works with caregivers and patients in different settings, and Kairos Dance. Let's see, do I have one more? Additional resources. We mentioned a white paper. AARP last month produced an article, Dance, Act, the Fine Arts. They call it anti-aging, but I think we call it aging with potential. And finally, we have, for those that would like to develop programs, the Creativity and Aging Toolkit, along with information about the Creativity and Aging Study. So again, thank you for this time. I look forward to working with all of you. Our offices are ready to help you find resources, and it is indeed an honor to now turn it over to Anne, who will talk about her extraordinary program, TimeSlips.
Well, and you can tell that the tone's going to change a little bit. This is my friend the cowboy, who's become kind of my icon for storytelling. I'm really going to walk you through the TimeSlips project today, a little bit of its evolution, and as an example of this kind of work that Gay did such a great job setting up in the broader context. There you just see all of my information, and I'm going to focus actually on story as the common link between all of these different kinds of programs. I actually, as Gay was kind to mention, the think tank that my center did in 2009, and when I look back, we actually also did one in, I believe it was 2005, that Jean attended, and maybe 2005, where we brought in Maria Genet, Judith Kate Friedman, all of the folks doing this kind of work, and tried to figure out how to wrap more research around it, and what we all had in common at the root of our work, that we could maybe all be doing this work and do a common study in the way that Jean's work looked at theater, choral music, and visual art simultaneously. And we came to the core of it being about story. And so that's what I'm going to focus on today, is the root of TimeSlips, which at its heart is a improvisational, fiction-based storytelling workshop. So what exactly is story? And let me say that, as you all probably know, there are entire disciplines set up to answer this question. Anthropology, sociology, English departments, any kind of study of narrative, ethnography. There are many, many definitions of story where we could start. I, of course, went right to Ms. Miriam, which is an account of incidents or events. Is that right? I see stories in the Ms. Basting definition as being pieces of people, whether they're made up, whether they're short, fragmented stories, whether they're long, sensical, beginning, middle, and end stories. It doesn't really matter. They are pieces of the people from whom they emerge. And in all of those different anthropological studies, the psychological studies, the English department studies, all of those things. Stories are how human beings connect across time from one generation to the other. I just finished a project in which an entire long-term care facility, 700 people who live there and 700 people who work there, read and talked about Homer's Odyssey for a year and a half. And that's a 2,000-year-old story that there are many, many other people, 2,700 actually, many people have talked about for many, many, many years, and we'll be talking about for years to come. Stories are how we understand ourselves in the moment, and they're also how, as we tell a story, we put ourselves into the future and grow ourselves. They're how we pass values to each other across time. They're how we organize our culture, and they're how we put ourselves in context with the larger world. And by gum, they're good for us too, says our cowboy. And this, Gay talked about this a little bit as well, and I just have it more sort of the pithy version of the more research-based that Gay gave you, which is that they challenge our minds, putting narrative together, going into our brain, assembling the pieces, and putting it into a narrative actually develops cognitive reserve, expands your mind. Now we understand brain plasticity, and we know that we can continue to grow it. They help us build our social network. I said it helps us connect us to each other. All you have to do is think about when you share stories with other people, that's how you connect to each other. That's how you build your social network and your sense of social support. They provide meaning and purpose. And this is a study, the Bachman study out of Chicago, that really showed that having a sense of meaning and purpose was protective against is associated with being protective against dementia. And to me, that's everything. That's all the core of the social and cultural work that we're doing in the arts to improve brain function, to improve everything on the inside. We're making meaning, and that in and of itself is preventative against dementia. There are studies about journal writing, all kinds of different research that writing and self-expression through story reduces the cortisol levels. I mean, they've got those fancy measurement systems now, so we know that they're reducing stress. That's for caregivers and for the people going through the symptoms of dementia. And it helps us know each other better. Part of the value of expanding and building your social network is if your care partner doesn't know who you are, they can't care for you in the way that would make sense for you. So sharing stories can actually not only create an expanded social network for people, but it also can improve the situation of care by helping care partners get to know each other better. And you know, the thing we often hear, and I heard it in testimonies from folks in the MoMA program as well, all these programs, a lot of times caregivers say, I learned something new about them. I never knew that. I've known this person for 70 years, and I never knew that. Or I've known this person, this is my mother, I thought I knew her very well. I didn't know that. So the fact that stories provide a meaningful experience is really, to me, the core of the matter, and that's where my heart is in this work. They enable us to reach each other in meaningful ways. So the meaning is shared. The meaningfulness of the situation is both for both sides of the care equation. It's meaningful for the person with dementia symptoms, and it's meaningful for the care partner who may or may not have dementia symptoms of their own. And stories, to get back to Gay's point earlier as well, and to that think tank that when we all came together, stories and narrative, sometimes you don't use words, and sometimes you do, really is what it comes down to. In word-based storytelling, it's poetry or prose, fiction, nonfiction. If you're not using words, you can use movement and dance, gesture. You can use images, which are many, many different kinds, including all the different visual arts and film. And you can also use sound or music. You can mix these all together as well for a really fascinating expression experience. And in dementia, I think what you have in the symptoms, and as symptoms progress, depending on the different kinds of dementia that there are, you have an erosion of rational language. The word you reach for might not be there. The concept that is being put forward to you, you might not be able to grasp it at that moment. But maybe you can make a gesture. Maybe you can express your intact emotional experience through brush. Maybe you can express it through grabbing for a different word and already be on the level of metaphor, already be into the act of poetry because of this illness that you have. You're already into the world of symbolic language. Really, a lot of the bulk of the work that Gay and the other artists that she was talking about and that I do is trying to create this realm of the symbolic language as a place for care partners to come and find each other and to reach each other again, because we're so used to using rational language and we're mourning its loss in the course of this illness that all we need to do is be brought back into that kind of lab where emotional expression through symbolic language is supported and we can find each other again. So in the realm of the words, my little airplane guy down there, the projects that I was just going to point people to, there's other ones as well, but the TimeSlips project is the one I'm going to walk us through the new website. StoryCorps we also worked with, they had a memory loss initiative, and on their website they have a little interview guide for folks who have memory loss, who are working with someone with memory loss, to make that personal family story exchange process a supported one. And then, of course, the Alzheimer's Poetry Project with Gary.
And, excuse me, we have a request from one of the members of our audience. Just need you to speak just a little louder.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll actually
Thank
hold
you.
the microphone up closer. Thanks. Here is the challenge. All that work that has found so much benefit for people with dementia through symbolic expression has been done where we can find them, which is in facility settings, nursing homes, assisted living, adult day services, so people often living at home. But as we know, the numbers are huge, and the vast majority of people with memory loss and with dementia symptoms are not in those settings. They're being cared for at home. And how can we bring these tools to them to reach them? It's a real challenge. One way into it is to beef up the cultural institutions where these folks have maybe been going their whole lives and continue to feel supported through the offering of, say, the MoMA Life program. This was the challenge that we took on with the TimeSlips site. We've been around since 1998, but we wanted to create a website that would enable people to really find creative engagement no matter where they're living. So could we bring collaborative story creation to the millions of people living at home? Could we use it to link families through the transition of their care if they have to go from home to even day center-based care or facility-based care? Could the families use this as a way to stay connected? Could staff and family also partner in storytelling in that way? Can we link family and friends across the miles? As we know, for the family caregivers or people who work with them, oftentimes in situations of dementia, the phone doesn't work anymore. Can't use the phone. So how could we do it? How could we be creative with each other as a way to bring back communication to people who live far away? And how can we let the world know that creative expression and creative engagement is possible for people with autism? So I'm going to take you to the site, and I'll show you what we did. There it is. Yay. So here is the new site. I have to move my little thing over. Let your imagination soar. I'd invite you all to come back and watch this little video. We don't have time for me to show it to you now, even though it's just a minute and a half, but I want to focus on other things. Here, what we wanted to set up is a place where people could read the stories, where they can write stories themselves, where they can collaborate with people to write stories, and where they can share stories with whoever they want to share stories with. If you're facility-based, you can share them with other people in your facility. You can send it out to a list of family members who might want to see the stories. If you're a daughter working with a father, say, with dementia, you can send that story to all of your family members and share this rare moment of joy in the disease process with others in your family. So that's what you see here. You don't need training to come onto the site and play with the custom software here. It's just for people to use, to come in, and all you got to do is sign in, and I'll walk you through that in a second. And then it tells you about the history and news and all the good stuff about us, and then the contact, of course. So let's go to the fun part, to the stories. When you come here, you can just read all the stories. There you see tons of them as we go. They're both image-based, image-prompted, and also word-prompted. You can also write a story. And what they're going to ask you to do to write a story is just sign in. And you just make up your own account. There's no cost to do this at all. There, so I'm signing in. Mine will look a little different because I have administration duties on the site, so you can't edit the content. So click Start a Story. And here you see the carousel that walks you through different images to use as a prompt. And one of the key things that we use in the trainings that we do for people who want to go on and get training is all of these, we teach people to use open-ended questions that give the creativity to the person who is responding. It's not about the facilitator's creativity. It's about the art of asking the open-ended questions. So some of these questions here give you an example of what those are. I always say we're throwing the keys of creativity to the person, to the storyteller. So I'm just going through a couple of these images here. And then I'll show you, if for some reason that's not enough for you, you can go into Show All, and there's probably 100 of these. And I've been having a blast with my kids shooting our own, which is really fun. And you might get to recognize some of my children by the end of this. And here's a couple from the Odyssey Penelope project that I did that are word prompted as well. And there's my friend the cowboy. So I'm going to go here, and I'm just going to show you what happens if I pick the cowgirl. Yes, I want to tell a story about this. Or no, thanks, I'll pick another image. I'm going to choose yes. And here's what you get. You make a story, a title. You just start asking. If you want some help with questions, you can just keep asking questions. So this gives you an example of what open-ended questions are. You can keep writing your story. Now, this is my favorite feature here. I'm going to invite, I want to add a collaborator. So up comes this screen. I'm going to ask Gay. Gay doesn't have to do it right now, but this is going to go to her, and the link for this is going to go to her email. And then she can join this this story. She'll come right back to this HTML page. She'll probably, if she's not signed in, she'll have to sign in. And then she and I, both of our writing will appear on this Tell Your Story page. We can save it for later. It will tell you whose turn it is as well in the software. Or when it's all done, we can publish it, and it will become, that means it'll go public onto the site. So the stories that you read on the site have been published. There you go. Let me go back to the webinar. There we go. So that's a little walkthrough of the site itself. Right now, TimeSlips is being used in group settings, so you can also click on there's a little magnifying glass on the site, on the image, and it tells you, it lets you download and print the image, so you can take it with you to a group and then come back and write up the story as well. Or you can sit down at the computer with someone and write it right on the spot. Or you can do this online collaboration as well. That's just a lot of fun. They wasted playing with this and writing stories with family members already. It's quite fun. This is a crucial piece of what TimeSlips is trying to do and what the other arts components, I believe, like Maria's work with Kairos, Judith Kate Friedman's work with songwriting work, Gary Glasner's work with the Alzheimer's Poetry Project. There's a core shift in this kind of work that really is within, I think, within long-term care, which until this point, we've really seen these things kind of through a therapeutic eye lens. I am going to do something to you that is going to make you better. And in this situation, we're really much more in line with the innovative framework of co-learning and student-based inquiry and teaching. We're really looking at this as a co-learning and co-creation situation. We're making stories with people. We're doing dances with people. We are learning just as much as a care partner as the person with memory loss that we're collaborating. So this is a situation in which we are playing together and making something and learning something together. People on the non-memory loss side of the equation are benefiting just as much from this as the person with memory loss. And that's a pretty radical claim. So there's research specifically around TimeSlips. The first research that you see on the left here is kind of a synopsis of Jean's work, Jean Cohen's work that Gay already presented. TimeSlips itself had a pretty rigorous 20 nursing home study where we embedded the method into 10 facilities and then had 10 control sites as well. And we were a little nervous. It was observation and survey. And we were observing the quantity and the quality of the engagement between staff and residents during transition times, meal times, and activity times. But we weren't even observing during the actual TimeSlip sessions. We were just on the unit in which it had been embedded. So we were going to potentially be capturing kind of a spillover effect. Would the overall quality of life and engagement between staff and residents improve just by embedding this method with a handful of staff and a handful of residents? And in fact, that is what we found in the study, a study by Tom Pritch, which I don't have cited here, but it's 2009, I believe. The quantity and the quality went out in a separate study by Lorraine Phillips. Mood and affect improved, communication improved, and challenging behaviors went down as well. And we also found that attitudes toward people with dementia from staff improved as well. And I think that's really simple. I think that people can get really discouraged by the losses and need to be able to see the places of asset, the places of strength, the places where communication can happen and where you can reach each other. You need to be reminded that those exist. And when you are, it makes your job easier. You feel as though you have an impact. You feel as though what you're doing is meaningful, So stories, again, just to review, stories enable us to reach each other. Improvisation gives us permission to play. Now, I just want to linger here for a second because I feel like when you're in the thick of a relationship, caring for someone with Alzheimer's, say, in particular, or maybe Lewy body, or it's a pretty intense situation. And the thought that you should or can play with someone, it can be the last thing you think of. The first impulse, might be to go and repair the person and go do reminiscence work and try to order their memories and put them all together so that the person is healed in that way. But the actual thing that enables you to reach each other is to play through emotional, symbolic expression where language can again happen and connection can again happen. And that's what improvisation, whether it's with words or through story, whether it's with words or movement or anything, that's where we can find each other again. But I really believe that we need to give people permission and even a ritualized structure in which to play because it feels so counterintuitive to the situation here. We can use story and play to connect staff, family, and community. The Penelope project that we just completed, of which TimeSlips really was a base, that was the core method that we used all across the facility. We brought in family, we brought in volunteers, all of them collaborating on a common project together, and the sense of community that was built was pretty overwhelming. Stories can actually help us improve the lives of people with dementia through improving quality of life and all the other mechanisms that both Gay talked about and that I talked about. The resources, just a couple of resources I wrote down here, is of course the TimeSlips site, which I just invite you to come and play with with the story software. It's a $80,000 open source free software, storytelling software. With many thanks to a series of funders that are listed on the site in case I forget one here, but the Langlock Foundation, the Helen Bader Foundation, Extend-A-Care Foundation, the Picker Institute, and the Retirement Research Foundation all helped support the creation of this really a gift that is only as good as however wide we can spread it out to people who need it. The Spark Alliance is the group of the cultural institutions that Gay referred to here in Wisconsin that range from a children's museum and the Historical Society to a maritime museum and the Museum of Wisconsin Art and the John Michael Kohler Art Center as well. There's 10 of them all together, and they've all created programs. The thing they have in common is that they're all really small, so the MoMA model of opening on the day when they're closed to the public is just not possible. So they've all kind of created their own unique programming, which is really interesting to look at. That's my center's website where we have free downloadable white papers of all of the think tanks that we've done in the past. Of course, there's the NCCA website and storycorps.net, and then another storytelling site that's called Story Center, just to give you ideas, not dementia focused, but just ideas for storytelling. This is a photograph from the Penelope project, where we worked with the folks out there for, like I said, over a year and a half. The stories that we gathered through the creative discussions, through the improvisational discussions, were all kind of used as data and content to build toward the creation of a play that we performed site-specifically with a professional theater company collaborating with residents and staff. And this was a T-shirt that we had made for everybody who was involved. Our cunning, noble, wise, and lovely queen was the choral part for any time you heard the name Penelope. And in the final scene, anybody who wanted to could play Penelope on the stage. And so we had 40 to 50 people all playing Penelope on any given day during performances. And one of the things that we said about the Penelope Project, and is true about its root, which is TimeSlips, is that co-creation, when you make something together, you're saying to someone with dementia, I hear you, I see you, and I care. You're echoing back the creation through the process of the improvisational storytelling. Whatever comes out, you echo and you accept, and you weave into a meaningful expression. And that's the best work in the world. I got to say, sometimes I feel like the luckiest person. I have the best job in the world. So in another little nutshell synopsis about this, about the TimeSlips, the way we structured the new website is, again, it's free. If people want training, that is available online, and we're putting together some in-person workshops as well for next year. If you do go through the training, people can be individually and facility or organizationally certified. We made, because we know not everybody is going to be able to use the website, we made at-home kits for people, which are really lovely little books that have about 50 images and then a blank page and then sample questions as well. And then for the Penelope Project, we had such an incredible experience that the 3 collaborative partners, Sojourn Theater, Luther Manor, the care facility where we work, and then the university faculty and students, are hosting a summer institute where if you come, particularly if you come with a partner to create your own project, you get a reduced rate. It's really a 3.5-day workshop to generate your own project idea and work together to create one. And we're embedding a TimeSlips training in the middle of it, so people will walk away with that tool as well. Are we okay with time, Adrina? I believe. I wanted to take you back, if I can, here, to the website one last time and just read to you one of the stories, just a little piece of one of the stories. You can browse by theme. I'm going to go right to children. And you can see some of the folks who sign in as different day centers or care facilities or individual people and families. You see when people are collaborating right here. And I'll take you down to this bottom. This is one of my favorite stories.
We have time.
Okay. So you saw the picture of the baby in the bag there. And you see here how you can go and you can download and print the version there. And it also gives you image credits in case you want to create your own little book. I'm not sure why they're not showing up here, but it'll tell you either, most of these come from Creative Commons license, and you just have to attribute the person who took the photograph. Some of them will say non-commercial, so you can sell them, but you can use them. So that's where all of those things are located. So this came from the Jewish Home and Care here in Milwaukee. And here's an example of the story that they went through this process of a facilitator asking open-ended questions and then writing down everything someone is saying, making sure they're getting it right, including gestures or sounds or anything that's said, and then reciting it, retelling it back to the group. So they say, his mother disappeared temporarily. The baby has mischief, but he is smiling and hiding. Who's he hiding from? His mama, because he didn't want to be in a crib. He didn't want to be, I don't know. She remembers he's there. She put him in there. It's a big bag. The mother is a magic lady. A magic lady. Oh, a magic lady. We're going to make a story out of this yet. She's going to take Traveling Thomas. She's going to make Traveling Thomas disappear. Yeah. And then she's going to make him disappear. That's right. Listen next week, and you will find out. That's good. Let's find out next week in the next chapter. Let's send him to the Bahamas. No, we're going to send him someplace else. What fun. I doubt that's the end. I definitely doubt it. And then down below they say, we have a long way to go. We're going to take him on a lot of adventures. What else do we have to do? He could go to a fishing place. He has lots of places to be sent to. I don't think so. He's going to the land of ice cream and cookies. Yeah, where else could he go? The land of peppermint airplanes. He's a nice baby. He could go, I said, he could go there to where could he go? Wherever I want. I want him to go where I want him to go. His mom wants him to have a happy adventure. That's the end of this chapter. Listen in next week. No, this is not the end. It's the end of this chapter. We have nothing else to do but write more chapters. You know, it's pretty remarkable when I do these trainings in places, and I usually show the picture to the group that I'm training, who doesn't have memory loss problems usually. And their stories that they tell tend to be a little more, these stories can be so free. People can have 5 names. People can go like to the Bahamas, to the land of peppermint air, and you feel this kind of freedom and almost euphoria sometimes in the stories themselves about the power of imagination and what imagination gives to people who have learned through the disease to sit themselves down for fear of showing a symptom or of showing evidence of whatever symptom they're experiencing. They edit themselves down out of suspicion that some sort of creative expression might be misinterpreted. But you can clearly, in reading some of these stories online, feel the power of reversing that and going right to the imagination as the place of strength and asset. So the fun part, too, is that you can see all the stories that are based on the same image. So you can see how people's imagination are very different. All right. So, Gay, do you want to finish up and then we can answer questions maybe?
Certainly. Thank you, Anne. What we've seen with Anne's work and TimeSlips, and we've worked with many of the people that TimeSlips has trained across the country, that it really creates cultural change within a home, within a long-term care, within day centers, where not only does the storytelling time become enriched and full of imagination, but the questions between the caregivers and the people with memory loss change, and the relationships change, and the quality of life for all change. So it's an extremely powerful program. Kathy Kelly and I talk often about how Anne's work is about enchantment, and especially this time of year where we see all sorts of commercial enchantment. This is day-to-day, moment-in-the-moment enchantment, and we really welcome all of you to enter into this. And we look forward again to working with you. The National Center for Creative Aging has free membership, so just come to our website and sign on. You'll see that we'll be really advancing and developing our website in months to come through a generous grant from the National Endowment for the Arts and the MetLife Foundation. So we are certainly in a new part of person care service and community building, and are glad to be your partners across the country as we make these important contributions. So I will certainly entertain questions with Anne, but again, thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Gay and Anne. I see that we do have a few questions, but before we get to them, I also want to let the audience know, as well as the two of you, that we've had several comments already about how great the information is, that it's fantastic. And unfortunately, the sound quality, it's been a little bit of a problem, but we'll see what we can do in terms of perhaps enhancing it for the archived copy of this webinar. But for now, let's go to our first question. We have someone asked, is there a cost for the site? And I making the assumption they're talking about the TimeSlips site.
TimeSlips site. You can go on and play on the website. If I can go back there, I'll go back. You can go on and play and tell stories all you want, and there's no. Oh no, let me see. There it is. The signing in is free. You can write stories. All you have to write the stories, you have to sign in, but that's free. We wanted to get this out into the hands of people because so many people need it. If people want to be trained, you can train. And there's like I said, there's an easy online training that has about a dozen, 15 videos in it that shows it. If people, you don't need that to actually do it, but some people really want to be able to say they're doing the method specifically. They want to certify in it, and so we answered that by offering that to people. And those have a cost to them, mainly just to keep the system up. It's as low as we could make it to make it supportable in an ongoing way. But the site itself is free to use, and please feel free to do it. And the contact page that I have access to all of the comments there as well. So if you guys have more questions, feel free to use the contact page to ask questions. The About page has a great FAQ where I've taken every question pretty much that I've ever heard. This is fun. Who was it designed for? Can I see it in action somewhere? Can I learn? How can I learn more? There's a lot, and this is where the citations are actually for all the studies as well. You can find them in the About page. So go there and see if you have a question. It's probably answered there, but also really honestly don't hesitate to use the contact page.
Okay, thank you. Another question has come up. The participant says that her mother has mild Alzheimer's disease. She likes the programs that you both are presenting, but how can she encourage her mother to participate? She can't seem to get her out of the house and away from the TV.
That's a great question. And this is something we really came up against with the Penelope Project. People experience fewer symptoms if they take fewer risks. And so getting involved in something new can be scary because you're worried from the person with dementia perspective that you might be exposing yourself to expressing symptoms of the disease, to letting people know you're not going to, if something could go wrong. So risk at that point, I think, is really, people have an aversion to it. And we came to talk about the rolling, ongoing invitation. And just, maybe not today. Maybe today let's you and I talk a little bit. Let's you and I look at a couple pictures and see what we think. Let's you and I do something. And it may be just a rolling sense of invitation that eventually gets you there. And the most important thing is not to stop crying, because that really is setting the person off on the ice floe into social isolation. And, some of the most moving research I've done in the last couple of years has been on the impact of social isolation from a surprising place, really from solitary confinement studies and then other psychological studies that show that when you get isolated socially, it creates symptoms that aren't unlike dementia. And so just when I look at long-term care facilities now, I tend to think of them as group solitary confinement situations where everyone is in an individual sphere and not really engaging with each other. And so a lot of the work that we're doing is really trying to bring people into community again and connect again and see what that does for the reduction of symptoms that might be from the environment rather than from the illness itself. So don't stop trying. Take some baby steps, and then I would say almost the most important thing, which is why I love working with art students and theater students, is that you project an acceptance and a comfort with play yourself, and that goes a long way toward inviting people to play with you. That is something that all the people that Gay mentioned, Judith Kate, Friedman, Maria Genet, all the people who work with Maria, all the folks at Dance Exchange, Gary Glasner, that's something you notice right away about the quality of those practitioners. And the people who are trained nationally as TimeSlips trainers and facilitators, they project an acceptance and a comfort with playing and improvising that invites someone to play with them. And that's, that's an art in and of itself, but you can do it as well, to play with someone and to give yourself permission to play with your mom. That was a long, rambling answer. Sorry.
Okay, thanks, Anne. Another question: how much time do dementia participants average in writing a story?
It depends on how they respond to how good the facilitator is. And if the facilitator can keep asking questions. Some of it's really facilitator-based and not storyteller-based. Most commonly, group story situations where you've got, 4 to 10 people doing a story together, they can go from a half an hour to 45 minutes. I tell the story about the first time I ever did this, which I was working in a really intense nursing home situation, in which I found it almost impossible to concentrate, let alone, the folks I was working with. And we went from almost nothing working for 6 weeks to a 45-minute story about a cowboy named Fred Astaire who was married to Gina Autry. Who, there was song, there was movement, there was sound, it was stunning. And the fact that could happen, I think, has kept me doing this for almost 15 years.
Someone asked, is the outcome the same when a participant does it verbally because he cannot write?
Often the facilitator is the one who's writing down the story. So there's different roles that people can play. I probably should have shown. If I have time, I can play that little minute-and-a-half video if you want me to. Or I can send people to go watch it. You can see the facilitator writing down the story, and then stopping to retell it, and then asking more questions. Again, it's that sense of rolling invitation. You're asking questions. You're writing down the responses as best you can, because sometimes the answers are nonsensical to you or in a language you don't know, and you're weaving it all into a story, usually just by reading back what you've written down. So the writing isn't really a barrier. The writing is the responsibility of the facilitator. Sorry that wasn't clear.
Okay, that's fine. Are you considering developing an application for iPads for TimeSlips? And the participant says that she could see that being used very easily in home.
Yeah, and I think it already is pretty easy at home. The typing on the iPad is almost more of a problem than on a laptop for this kind of story, for the kind of people that we're working with, but it's actually pretty iPadable almost already.
Were nursing home staff, besides activities involved in the story, or acting projects, such as medical staff?
That's a great question. I'll answer it in two parts. The TimeSlips kind of as an individual program. So when it's a standalone, you're offering it as just, this is story time, this is improvisational story time. You can use anybody you want. One of the benefits of this that we've found that lends it toward person-centered care is sort of the creation of a non-hierarchical team. So when we do trainings or when we're working in facilities to embed this, we encourage people to use teams that are kind of interdisciplinary teams. So even, CNAs are doing the facilitation. So line staff, like direct care staff, family volunteers, high school or college volunteers are great because it's a positive way to engage that has kind of a ritualized structure around it, so they go in very easily and find it to be a positive experience. Family members are great to work with as long as they don't correct the responses. And often what I'll do is invite family members in to observe first, because the whole magic, the enchantment, as they kindly put it, goes flat if you correct. If people feel as though they're going to say something wrong, they won't say anything at all, or they'll think this is more of a cognitive test than it is a free laboratory for experimenting with communication, which is really what it is.
If I could add, we recently conducted a TimeSlip training at the Veterans Administration Medical Center Community Living Center here in Washington, D.C., and it was truly an amazing experience. I was so glad I was able to be there for an afternoon session. But we conducted it really as training for caregivers, all staff, nurses, we had social workers, recreational therapists, along with the residents. And we conducted it, in fact, on all 3 shifts.
Yeah.
And that was important, and I would recommend that all of you that are in such facilities think about this, because probably one of the most powerful of the 3 trainings was at night, when we often have a lot of activity with people with dementia. And if I can share one instant where one of the residents just laughed all the time as part of her dementia. And she laughed and laughed. And the TimeSlip trainer, Liz Nichols, truly remarkable, incorporated the laughter into the story, showing the picture, and there was laughter, and then the group laughed. And it was amazing. Towards the end of the session, the residents stopped laughing uncontrollable as she had before, and joined in and became really completely in sync with the group. And afterwards, she looked at me and she said, I laugh at things I cannot control. And so she actually, the TimeSlips offered her such a comfort level that it was able to really, dramatically improve her quality of life at that time, and show her to the other caregivers as certainly in a different light than they usually saw her. And that was one of the most moving moments for me in my experience in this area. So again, we see remarkable things, and it's important for staff of all levels to be part of this.
I think that's a great, thank you for sharing that, Kay. I hadn't heard that story yet, but it's making me think of other situations where people with dementia develop attached responses to things, either a verbal phrase that they'll say over and over again because accepted and it passes. And when in the course, like it can be a sound. In one setting, a woman would say ba 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 ba, and that was really all she would add to things. But when you're invited as a storyteller to add to a meaningful experience, so when your words are being woven into something that has meaning, you become aware and take ownership of your expression in a different way. And it sounds kind of like a similar thing that you're describing, where this woman would start inserting words inside of the sounds after a certain point. Or another person who was speaking, which I have since learned was Swedish, started saying other things as well in the course of the storytelling with me. He was using naughty language to tease me, basically, as I was echoing what he was saying in the course of this, and I said, I'm going to echo what you say. Really, I'm accepting anything that people say in this process. And so he kind of, got a little sparkle in his eye and spoke to me in English. It's really interesting. So it's people taking feeling their words being valued or their expression, because some people are beyond words and really are literally giving me movements or sound. And we're asking for sensory responses as well. So, do you hear any music in the story? And if people don't have words, they can hum. And there's one woman who hums and makes up songs every time I ask her if there's music in the story. So it really is that sense of a laboratory where people grow in their sense of self-expression, and yet where others can join them so that it also is simultaneously building community.
Okay. Just wanted to remind everyone that our time is coming to a close. We do have a few remaining questions. And as I had indicated before, we will forward those questions directly to the presenters, and they will try to respond to those questions after the presentation, as time permits. But I do want to make sure that everyone's question is responded to. If you'd like to be notified about any other upcoming webinars, training, policies, or program practices, you please visit our website, www.caregiver.org, and subscribe to our policy digests and technical assistance newsletters. Please remember to complete the survey at the end of this session because it'll help us to plan for future webinars. And as several of you indicated in your comments, we want to thank both Gay and Anne for the wonderful presentation. They think these are wonderful resources that you shared, taking your time today to get this information out to others. And so we'll make sure that those comments get to Gay and Anne as well. Again, thank you for joining us, and this concludes the webinar.